You can take a photograph that was taken 30 years ago, put it into a search engine, then we can find out where that person is now and what do they look like, even though it's 30 years later.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Open source intelligence for the EP professional, is it something that everyone has to do, or is it only for a few select specialists? I'm here with John Moss, and today we're going to be talking with Pete Jenkins of ISS Training, and we're going to be looking at its applicability, not just in an academic sense, but in everyday operations. It's a pleasure to, have Pete, because of course he is a long-standing friend of the BBA and circuit community. John, what do you think we can try and get out of today's session?
Well, this is a huge area, and I think it's something that almost everyone needs to know something about. And I'm not just talking in security. I mean, everyone who uses the internet, because that's your information that's out there and other people have access to it. It's open source, so it's out there to be accessed by anyone. And if you don't know what's out there, then you're putting yourself at risk. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting Pete's perspective on this. And it's also great that Sean is on the interview as well, because this is a bit of a rabbit hole that I know Sean's going down at the moment. He's really delving into it.
Yeah, he is. And he's also a student of Pete's. So this is going to be nice. We can have the student and the teacher all on the same podcast. But let's take a step back. A lot of people with a military background might, know a spectrum of intelligence that one can sort of draw from: HUMINT, SIGINT, GEOINT. But where does this OSINT sort of fit in, or does it overlay all over the top? Because I suppose any of those ints could be available open sourced.
Well, yeah, you've just answered your question. As far as I would answer it anyway, that's how I see it. It's kind of a convergence of all of those things, because all of those factors still come into play for the most part. It's about how you access the information more so than anything else.
And do you think that this is something that will be of concern, of course, not just to individuals about their own data, but in a day-to-day EP role? How often will an EP operator be tasked with finding out some OSINT? Or is it going to be more of a specialist role for some specially tasked operator?
Well, I think most high net worths now and prominent people, anyone who is vulnerable, I mean, we're all vulnerable to some degree, but people with means and people, with something to protect should be investing in this. And for the most part, a lot of people are. There are high-level, talented experts who are being employed in these roles. However, the things that they go out looking for and the threats that they're trying to stop are often at a very different level to what the EP operator can look for. And that's not just to do with skill, ability, and their focus. It's also knowledge. Nobody knows the principle quite the same way as what protection does. Protection and maybe, the butler and so on. But you have to remember, protection is with the principal everywhere they go. So they see things, they hear things. More importantly, they get a feel for things. And they don't just see the principal, they see all the family members. And they might see them in a way in which the principal doesn't. And so you have this very unique perspective where you have all these different pictures, these different viewpoints of the principal's life, the family's life. And that can enable you to be able to look for threats that almost everyone else in that inner circle wouldn't know either what to look for, how to look for, or if they saw something, they wouldn't necessarily know that it was of importance. Does that make sense?
It does. I think you framed it excellently. And actually, that's quite a motivational factor as to why someone in EP should go on an OSINT course. I really like that. So perfect. Why don't we hear from Pete himself? And along with Sean West, let's explore this very, very timely topic of OSINT, open source intelligence.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit magazine.
Open source intelligence and the EP protection specialist of tomorrow. We are very, very pleased to be welcoming Pete Jenkins of ISS Training to the podcast. Myself and Sean West, a student of OSINT, in fact, are going to be looking at this topic and interviewing Pete just to see how we can improve the industry. It's a pleasure to have you on, Pete. How are you doing?
That's great. Thank you very much for having me. No, I'm fine, actually.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's get into it. OSINT, what's wrong with the current state of affairs in the industry?
I'm not sure if there's anything wrong with it, but it's something that's growing literally on a daily basis. And because the subject is so dynamic, it changes every day. That's the hard part, because you've got to keep up. I've got to go on training courses for specific topics involving open source. Otherwise, I'll get left behind. Good example is a website that I use very regular for photography and research, and geolocation has just changed. They're charging people for it when it used to be free. So that's what we're up against, finding other sites that can do the same thing and make life easy for ourselves.
I see. Yes, always evolving. That's very important. But what about yourself? Why OSINT? Where does your passion for this topic come from?
Well, I think from for the surveillance work that we're doing and the investigative work that we're doing, so many people these days put things up on the internet, whether it's social media, business forums, dating sites. If we're carrying out some background checks prior to a surveillance, it's our first port of call to go onto the internet and find out as much as we can about that subject and their intentions, or even if it's just a photograph, to identify them. And we can also use this live in conjunction with actual live surveillances that are on the ground.
That sounds current and exciting if you're in the field, especially. But what about the people out there that know nothing about this topic, the completely uninitiated? What should they know?
I think a lot of people will Google something. They'll look at a person, but then they'll just put in their first name, their second name. But there are certain search operators that we use, simple things like speech marks that collect phrases together, then put in a third search term, or using a certain search engine to find out particular information. And I think this is what people lack. They just go straight to Google, bang something in, hoping they're going to come out with the results, and they'll get 43 million hits when we don't want that. We want 5 or 6 hits on that subject. So it's knowing how to minimize those hits and be a bit more accurate with our research. I think that's one of the main things. And then show or demonstrate, as we do on the open source course, how easy it is to get some information. Or you can take a photograph that was taken 30 years ago, put it into a search engine, then we can find out where that person is now and what do they look like, even though it's 30 years later.
Wow. Okay. Powerful tools. With us, of course, we have Sean West, a student of yours and a student of OSINT. Sean, I think we're going to angle this interview slightly different in that you can be the champion for the audience, I suppose, because you've been on the course. So maybe if I ask you, why did you feel you needed to go on such a course, and what were your general takeaways?
Well, the reason I wanted to go on the course, I just thought it was a great tool as I look to develop myself in the industry. I work, from being a close protection operator, went up into the sort of management levels, run my own company, and have a number of high net worth clients. And it's a great tool you can bring to the add to your toolkit, being able to search things, professionally, find out, dig deep, and carry out better due diligence than, like Pete suggested, other people who maybe just do a Google search. I learned a great deal on the course, and it blew me away, some of the techniques and how easy it was to find information on people. People know you can find things on the internet, and you should watch your privacy settings, but to see how easy it actually is actually pretty scary.
Interesting. Well, then obviously there's a wealth of data out there, but Pete, for people who are embarking on their first course, like Sean was, and it's in this topic, what sort of a prerequisite do you sort of recommend? Is there any other course they need to have done? Is there any background they need to have?
Not particularly, I don't think, because as long as they're a bit computer savvy. I mean, the 2-day course that we host, all you need is a decent computer. We provide all the exercises, visual ones, the practical exercises that the guys carry out on the course. When it gets to being geeky, then you need to know a little bit more about things like Linux and machine code, and it does get complicated. But in 2 days, we can only teach so much. And even since Sean did his course, we have really sexed up the course, and we've changed it quite a lot because of the searches of the systems that are in place. And it's not just about searching for people either. It's we may have a photograph of a person that stood somewhere, and we want to establish where in the world are they, what was the date, and what was the time when the image was taken. And there's no data embedded within that image. So by using various search engines, we can find out where the location is, and then by other systems find out the date and the time of exactly where it was. And we've had to do this for insurance purposes, or insurance fraud purposes, I should say. I've digressed a bit and I forgot what your question was.
No, it's fine. That paints a great picture. I guess I was wondering, someone says, well, it sounds a little bit too complicated for me. I need a forensics background. I need an IT background. What would you say to that?
No, not at all, especially for our 2-day course. It doesn't sound much being 2 days, but we do cover a hell of a lot of ground. And it's very practical. We send all the learners photographs, images, exercises. So when we do a session on, say, using a search engine properly, they get given a live exercise, and it gets to be a bit of a teamwork effort on behalf of the learners, or a competition to see who can find the results fast. It may be a picture of a guy sat in a graveyard, and from that image, we need to know where is that person to an accuracy of 3 meters using a system called What 3 Words, which is quite new to people. We also need to know what time of year it is by looking at what's in the image. And then if they think they identify where it is, they've got to corroborate that. They can't just guess, they've got to corroborate and prove that that is the exact spot. And there's lots of exercises like that. But we teach a bit, we give an exercise, then we teach a bit more, then we give another exercise, and it's quite progressive throughout the 2 days. So you don't really need to be a geek or IT literate to do the course.
No, I think you do need to, like I say, be a bit computer savvy. As long as you can work a computer or a search engine, and you've got an inquisitive mind, I think. You don't stop. As soon as one door closes, you look at another, you think outside the box. What else can I use? What other tools do I have to find that information, the information you require? But yeah, I think you're right. You don't need a forensic background or anything like that, as Pelham suggested. It is just an inquisitive mind. You're able to use a computer and you have an internet connection, and it's amazing what you can find.
Yeah. The other thing to add to that, and Sean's correct, you won't find everything on the internet about a place or about a person. So it's getting that background and then actually putting your boots on the ground and possibly corroborating that with it. A lot of people think open source is great. It will tell you everything you need to know. It doesn't. You've got to work the other half out yourself by other means.
So, Pete, that presents an interesting question. When especially the uninitiated are thinking about this, they're saying, well, what can open source do? But more to the point, what is open source, and where's the line blurred between open source and, well, closed source? Where's that line?
Well, I suppose it's anything that's freely obtained on the internet. But then again, you're going to hit paywalls. For example, if you use a particular search engine, I'll use oneline2.com as an example because most people are familiar with that. It's a combination of the electors register, the phone book, and company's house. You can do so many searches free, or it'll get you so far for nothing. Then you have to pay. So you hit a paywall. If you've got a big budget, you can pay for subscriptions to many of these sites and databases where it's easier to get information. So that's it. Generally, you either pay for it or it's free.
Are there limits? So is it possible to be searching for open source intelligence and suddenly stumble across non-open source sources, which are perhaps not allowed? Is that a likely scenario?
Well, if you find it, I would say by virtue of that fact, it's open. But on a recent exercise we did, we had to identify the captain of a certain vessel. We found a spreadsheet in Denmark that listed all this personal and private information about a lot of boat owners that own vessels in the UK, which was totally unexpected and actually probably a breach of the Data Protection Act, because this document that you could download as a spreadsheet contained a lot of personal and private information from people's names, their addresses, their telephone numbers, and their email addresses, which was quite a surprise. But it was there, it was on the internet, but it was put out by another country. So yeah, you can find things that you probably shouldn't be able to. Okay. Well,
that's useful, because I think maybe people will be fearful. Oh no, I've stumbled across this, and now I'm going to get a visit from some agency or whatever. Why do you think that today's EP professional needs this? Surely it's going to be one person in the team. Is it that everyone will be faced with needing to conduct some OSINT research at some stage? But why EP and why OSINT?
Various reasons. I mean, if you've got pressure groups or activist sites, you can monitor those for anything that might go against your principle. If you're looking at live, some areas, some towns, some cities, you can actually go on their website and you can dial into their CCTV. So you can see what the street cameras are looking at and actually get an updated view. There's various tweet maps where you could, let's say you've got an incident in, let's say, Regent's Park. You could then go onto TweetMap or SnapMap and various other sites and actually look to see who's tweeting and who's Snapchatting from that exact site. And it may give you a heads up or some of any incidents or anything that's taking place there. It might be a march, it could be a conference and what have you. So it can give you things live. Another good example is we conducted a surveillance on 2 characters in the summer. They came from abroad on a ferry, and by monitoring their social media, we knew exactly where they were on their journey, throughout their drive, on the ferry, when they got off the ferry. We also knew what vehicle they were driving, and when they attended this event, we knew exactly what we were looking for. We knew exactly what they looked like and what they were dressed in. We knew their vehicle. And when they talked to various people at this event, we were able to photograph those people that they're connected to, and then turned it back on its head and searched social media. And we actually found out the identities of all the people they were connected with at this particular event. So in conjunction with conventional surveillance, we're also using open source at the same time to back up the team, really, and gather more intelligence.
And alongside that as well, if you're a CPO working one up, you can also use open source. If you haven't got time to go and do a recce, there's lots of information out there before you go to view. If you're going to a different city, you go to a football stadium, you can do complete walkthroughs at some of these places now. So there's lots of information to be had there if you haven't got the time, like you say, or the manpower to get out and do these recce's. There is a lot you can draw from online and different tools that's available to you.
And possibly I could see that being very important when no one could travel anywhere, because I saw a lot of EP companies offering intelligence as a service in a way they hadn't been before, because they wanted to, of course, maintain, business operations. Was OSINT especially useful during the pandemic, especially because there was a lot of hype, a lot of hysteria, still is, and does OSINT help in that regard, where you can't have people on the ground? all the time during the pandemic, Pete?
It's funny because during the pandemic, obviously because the surveillance operators or investigators couldn't go out on the ground, but equally so, what would be our potential targets weren't going out either. So in some respects, it sort of died a little bit, and we had a big lull from both sides. Although some of the investigations still took place, there were travel restrictions, but we're able to get around that. But open source, we're still able to build up pictures because investigations basically were put on hold during the pandemic, which is why there's a big demand in surveillance at the moment, because all the work, especially within the insurance fraud industry, it's now stacked up and they are well behind with their investigations. But when those jobs from the insurance company are coming in and stacking up, it gives the chance for the researcher to do their background checks on those so they're ready to go out to the surveillance teams and do the work. So, that would, if it was to be an advantage of the pandemic, probably that was it. It just gave guys a chance to do all the background, but still we've got a backlog of surveillances actually out on the ground.
And then what sort of skills do you think that somebody will learn on an OSINT course? Because I can imagine, I don't know, during, for example, January 6th, there were loads of Twitter vigilantes identifying all sorts of things around the Capitol, and it seemed quite exciting, but it seemed quite, I don't know, amateurish in a way, although they did seem to draw up a lot of good stuff from just photos. So what are the skills that people would sort of learn in an OSINT course?
As well as the researching, it does take practice because we cover a lot of ground on the course, but you've got to go away and digest it and then put it into practicalities. Sean hit the nail on the head earlier on by saying you've got to think outside the box. So if you've got a demonstration and you've got some guy in a t-shirt with a logo on it and with frizzy hair, we can take a snapshot of that. Hopefully we'll put it into a search engine and it might reveal their identity, or it'll show where they've been at another event or demonstration. Another piece of software might pick up on the wording on his t-shirt, and that will give us another clue to their identity or where they're actually photographed on the internet as well. There's a system out there called Rosetta. I think Facebook started it off, where you can hold a placard or you can have wording on the t-shirt. And what the search engine does now, it actually reads what's on the placard and does a search for that term or that phrase rather than a picture of the placard. So that's helped in some ID. I know the open source experts, Bellingcat, they've cracked a lot of jobs, a lot of research stories by tying various people into various demonstrations by the clothing that they wear and identifying them on one website to another, and to another. But I think thinking outside the box, where can I go with this? I've got this image. What shall I do with it? Shall I put it into another search engine? Shall I identify it? Something simple like a logo on a shirt or something in the background. It may be a sign. It may be a piece of furniture that actually identifies where that person was when they've taken it. And it's using your common sense as well as with your intelligence and what you know of how to search for this. So it's a combination of all things, really.
So Pete, I can imagine an EP operation wanting to do everything you've just mentioned in reverse and find out how to obscure access to their principal. And I think people quickly realized how to block the call sign of an incoming private jet. That surprised many when everyone could just find it easy. But what would you have to do to try and hide the movements of your principal from, potentially dangerous eyes?
That's quite a big question. I think first of all, it's going to be from the security of the security team and anybody else connected with the principal, even from a photograph that the principal's cleaner puts up on Twitter or Facebook of their principal leaving the house to the whole security issue. I don't think the weak link is the security team and the principal, it's anybody that's surrounding them.
I think it's a lot of education, isn't it? I mean, a lot of what I deal with is high net worth families, and they have their younger siblings or teenage family who are on all of the different social networks, and some of them don't understand. They just they post everything wherever they go, whatever they do, whatever they buy, eat, everything. And every time they post, it'll have their location, who they're meeting with, what they're doing. And until someone points out to them what they're doing and that they may be of target because of who their uncle or their father, mother is, they don't really see they're doing anything wrong. And it just goes straight back to simplistic things such as, I guess, usernames and passwords as well. You'll have these people that will use the same username and password on so many different sites. And just from doing your course, Peter, that was my first sort of step into open source intelligence, professionally doing a course. And it opens you go down the rabbit hole, and you can become quite addicted to, learning more, learning new tools. And you find tools, and, just put my email address into a couple of the tools and it comes up, if the leak sites, your old passwords. And so I was sat with someone and he's put his email address in. He couldn't believe what I found out. He was like, he instantly changed all of his passwords on everything. And I think it's just a bit of education to these people to how, from doing a small course, what I done, an intro and then moving on. So I'm by no means someone who's done years of training. What I can find out, or the uninitiated with a little bit of training can find out. If someone's targeting you, it's pretty scary what someone can do for a 2-day course to a professional. And I think that makes you look then and think, Jesus, yes, I do need to look at my security and stop posting my things all over the place. I don't use the same username, passwords, wherever it is. And you give a bit more thought to what you're putting out there, your footprint, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Earlier this year, we had to trace an individual, and we knew his Facebook details, his Instagram, and Snapchat. And it was quite good, really, for us, because he liked to take selfies. And we demonstrate this on the course, that this character, we had to find out where he was. And we established he was in London. And by taking the selfies, we took 5 or 6 different selfies and family photographs, established what part of London it was. And then literally, I spent 5 hours on Google Earth, walking the streets, digitally walking the streets of this postcode area, looking for these 5 or 6 different properties which were in the background. And I established that 4 of them were all on the same street. And that gave us a great heads up, because over a 4-year period, he'd been photographed on that same street. So then we could go back to the client and said, this is where he is. This is what we're up to now. We know exactly that he's in London. We know he's on this street. Do you want to go further and actually locate exactly where he is? So, just purely by people putting pictures up that they think is quite innocent. They're actually telling us quite a lot of, giving us a lot of intelligence. Although it's a selfie, it's what's in the background. It's what's in the foreground and everything else.
That makes me think, because on my own Instagram account, I try and post pictures of interesting things, and I try not to geolocate them, and I try not to put myself in them, and that's the common travel risk management policy. If you're going to Mexico, never ever put a geotag, because people are waiting to find you. And here, if you're looking to remain under the radar or just protected, what else can people do to protect themselves, apart from not posting? That's obviously going to be good. Can they post pictures of nice looking flowers and bits and bobs? I mean, what should they be doing?
Not using the internet, full stop. But it's like you say, somebody will put a picture up of a nice flower. I don't know, they're in Mexico, they've taken a picture of a flower, they put it on Instagram, and then somebody goes, where are you at? So then they go, well, we're in whatever town in New Mexico. So, and then people come, oh, I stayed there. Where I stayed in this hotel. Then they start, well, no, I'm in this hotel. And it goes on. So you can put one picture up, somebody asks a question that's on your friends list, and all of a sudden you've got the whole history.
So keep it in the DMs.
Yeah, keep it all private. I mean, it's a simple hack to find out when somebody's birthday is with Facebook. You go onto their profile, you search within that profile for the word birthday. And then all of a sudden you've got all these people going, happy birthday, Pete, happy birthday, Pete. And it's like the whole world knows my birth date now. Not that I use it as a password or anything, but it's just one little pivot point to take us somewhere else if we're doing our searches. don't post anything at all that's personal. Or I mean, I've got this philosophy. I only put on the internet what I want other people to see. Keep it as simple as that, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn. It's like Facebook. I only accept friends of people I've actually met and shook hands with. Very rarely will I take a friend request of somebody I don't know. LinkedIn is a bit of a different matter, but social media, and that's where you put your personal private stuff and you want your friends to see.
It always surprises me on LinkedIn. Some very attractive person, could be any gender, but anyway, person, maybe from Eastern Europe, suddenly making loads new security friends. And I'm like, really? Like, how come 300 of my fellow contacts have accepted? This is clearly not right. But what do you think then, Sean? Is this something that EP should actually be worried about, or is it a certain portion of the EP team that's going to be having to protect their principal in this way?
I think everyone should carry out the training. It just adds another dimension to what you can offer to your principal. So I definitely think everyone should do it. If you're working in the industry, increasing your investigative skills it's just a good tool. It's some good training to do. But also when you are asking the question, what can people do to stop people finding them? There is organisations out there that do sort of professional online vulnerability assessments, and they can do digital erasure of things that you've put up in the past, and they do almost a digital overwatch of things that come up about yourself, and they can remove all of that. I'd imagine it'd be quite a full-time. If you're trying to find something on somebody, you're always going to find it if you're looking deep enough. But it's like security. You put your cameras up, you put your whatever you put up as a deterrent. So if you are a high net worth individual, you can go to these companies and get them to erase the information that you don't want to be easily found. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult for someone who's looking for you. Of course, they're not going to erase everything, but it may be enough of a deterrent for someone to close the door and move on to the next easier target.
I think if I can add to that, I think for CPOs and what have you, they should be Googling themselves, I should say, doing research on themselves. And like Sean said, finding out where they've been mentioned on the internet, whether it's a social media handle or they've been named or their photograph. Because the main reason is recruiters also carry out open source research. So if I'm recruiting for a surveillance operator or an instructor or an investigator, and I get 20, 30 CVs, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to put their name into a search engine, the date of birth or the company that they've worked for, and I'm going to do a quick sift first. And if I see somebody dancing naked on a table in a pub, then they're not going to be the person, because, I mean, in the CP role, what if your principal does that? Searches one of the security team, it just backfires. So, yeah, you need to clean up your presence on the internet for the benefit of recruiters that won't dismiss you, or for the benefit of your principal that might decide to do a quick search because they're bored.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, that's a great point as well, because I recruit a lot of CPOs. It's one thing I never thought about there, but yes, I do that. I always Google who I'm employing, have a quick look on social media, just to see. You can see how they're communicating with their friends. You can kind of get a background of their personality as such. And yeah, it is a massive tool that recruiters do use. And there's been many times where just through carrying out that quick 2 minutes on Facebook or something like that, it has cost people a job where I thought they're not right for this position and I've just moved on. But where if I'd went off the CV, it might have been fine. But yeah, you do definitely, and it's a great point there, Pete. If you are working in the industry, you have to sell yourself as a professional. So whatever is on your social pages, that also needs to speak that you're a professional. And I have actually seen people lose jobs as well from things that they've posted, on principals' yachts and posting, pictures of them doing whatever they're doing, and people have actually lost positions because of this. So yeah, for sure, you need to keep an eye on what you're putting out there.
So Pete, obviously people can go on a course like your course, but there seems to be a lot of books out there. Are these are these books easy reading? Do they require to be accompanying a course? What sort of books could people go to sort of look at?
There is a book, probably the Bible for open source research. I'm just looking for it now. I forgot the name of the author.
Is it Michael Bazzell?
It is. It's Michael Bazzell's 8th edition. It's like 6 inches thick. But I've got a copy and I've speed read it. And I've got hundreds of dog-eared tabs throughout the book. It's a great tool. It's a great reference point to use if you're going to do this sort of work. The only problem, like we're on our 8th edition, and give it 6 months, 12 months, he's probably going to update it to a 9th one. But the recent copy, it's not that expensive. I think it's worth every penny. It's a great tool because you do forget things. There are thousands of websites out there. You can't cover them all. And Michael's book does cover quite a lot of research and tips of how to do things. And because it's so dynamic, he's progressive. He rewrites the book when he feels he's the need to. And it normally is updated. It's pretty good. The other place to go is Bellingcat's website or YouTube. YouTube's fantastic. You've just got to put in open source research, Twitter, or Snapchat, and you'll get guys up there. For some reason, they're always from Holland. A lot of them are from Holland, and I feel the Dutch are probably the international leaders in doing this type of work. I don't know why, but they seem to be very good at it. So reading books. I'm not a big fan. I've written a few books, but I'm not a big fan of books because I'd rather have somebody in front of me, coaching me, tutoring me, picking up on my mistakes to get it right. But there are some good resources out there. A few books on the internet. Search the internet for it.
Yeah, I'm with you with the Dutch. I think there's a lot of Dutch as part of the OSINT Curious project, and there's a lot of interesting Dutch operators. So Pete, what's next for you?
I'm involved in a lot of things as well. We've just finished a 2-week surveillance course. In my other hat, I work as a commercial photographer and an NUJ photojournalist. So we've had a few projects. Some have hit the news recently, and a couple more may hit the news in 3 or 4 weeks' time on some of the investigations that I've been involved with. But slowly training, carrying out the investigation work still, which should take us up to Christmas, if I'm allowed to say that word.
Yeah, it's nearly there. It's nearly upon us. I think things are moving really, really fast. All right. Well, this is short and sweet, but I really appreciate the look into the world of OSINT as applied to executive protection. That's why it's fantastic to have Sean, our co-presenter anyway, who's been on your course. Pete, from Sean and myself, it's been a pleasure having you on.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thanks very much.
Open source intelligence absolutely is everywhere, as is your data. I think such a key set of takeaways from Pete and of course Sean's experience learning from Pete. I really enjoyed today's session. What did you take away, John? I think there were so many different nuggets.
Yeah, definitely. We went down lots of rabbit holes, I feel, in this one, and all it did was pique interest. I think this is really a great taster episode to whet people's appetite and also to bring home the importance of why everyone needs to know something. And if that's of interest to you, then the different ways in which you can take that knowledge further, just like Sean is doing.
And as Pete alluded to, even with that canonical book that people seem to pick up on OSINT, it needs updating every 6 to 12 months because there's always a new source, or there are always sources that used to be free and are now not, and things that used to be closed and are now open. So I think it's a continual education to try and look at it. And there are some real world applications. You don't want the call sign of your principal's private jet featuring all over the place, but yet conversely, you might want to know if somebody of particular interest who potentially could threaten your principal is coming to town. So it's really swings and roundabouts. You're going to use it internally and externally.
Yeah, and I think one aspect of the discussion that I really enjoyed was, well, first of all, let me say that I think for a lot of people, this topic can often seem like, delving deep into search engines and extracting information about people through social media and so on. And of course, that does play a big part in it. But I think the example that Pete brought up with the photograph that he gives to his students, and asks them, and they have this competition to see who can come back with the information first. I think these are really good exercises, and it's a really good demonstration of how powerful these resources are, that you can get a random photograph and that you can then run with that and start to extract information like, where is the person, where on the planet are they, what road are they on, what time of year, what time of day, and taking all these different bits of information with an investigative mind, which I think is also really important. It's not just text. So it is about application as well, and coming up with a really specific set of data, from that. That's really exciting, and it's really dangerous as well. And that's why we, should be enthused by this and to get the knowledge ourselves, both so we can use it in an investigative way, but also so that we can ring fence ourselves and our clients and protect them.
Absolutely. And the power of some of these open source, feeds, both sides of the fence is amazing. I think in the podcast, I mentioned the OSINT Curious project, which has quite a lot of people from the Netherlands. And I know Pete said there's a lot of strong practitioners from the Netherlands. I literally went on their Twitter feed and they've sent me to an enormous treasure trove of potential OSINT sources, ranging from arms trading, banking, bribery, data sets, crypto, country risk, GeoInt, human trafficking. I'm literally reading them off the page and I'm thinking, if I found this list on just one little search, what could I find if I spent time? Now, obviously, I can't vouch for the effectiveness of any of these tools that I've literally just come across, but that's the spirit of OSINT. You've got to be curious about the task at hand. There's a lot of places we could go with this podcast today, but I'm really pleased we looked at it in with that teacher, trainer, and student perspective. Talking about learning and development, we have our very own learning and development forum coming up on the 19th of November. It will be in the UK evening, US afternoon, and Australian morning. And it's going to be a very, very interesting topic all around workplace violence and its applicability to executive protection, which I think, John, you'll agree is going to be an increasingly big problem.
Well, it's always been a big problem and it will always continue to be a big problem. And yeah, I think in recent times, it's probably been exacerbated also. And people coming back into the workplace is changing and different pressures and stresses on us as well these days. So these can all spill over, and knowing how to deal with these situations, both once they do spill over, but also what really interests me is the preventative side and the steps that can be taken beforehand. And I know, without dropping any names at this stage, I know some of our guests that we have lined up are very knowledgeable in this area. So it's going to be an absolute feast.
Absolute feast. And indeed, we're bringing the pages of the magazine to life. I think it's going to feature more in our articles. Of course, we're always looking for more lovely articles and varied articles. But apart from that, I think we're really pleased at the moment at the engagement we're getting across the board. But we still need you to share this podcast to spread the word. If you liked it, hopefully you did, please share and spread the message. And then if you wouldn't mind, if you go to our individual sources and hit like, it really does boost everything we're doing. And just to show that little bit of support, be that on Twitter or Instagram, or indeed, if you go into the BBA Connect app or the NABA Protector app, that is also a fantastic place to engage. OSINT, I'm really, really interested in it. Actually, so much more interested now I've done a little bit of OSINT myself. So from John and myself, it's been a pleasure talking to Pete Jenkins today. And we look forward to engaging with you on another Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.